So it's finally happened. Nintendo has announced their next generation console, the Switch 2, which everybody saw coming. The internet's still in a crazy buzz about this thing, even though we really didn't learn anything new. I mean, sure, we know there's a new Mario Kart coming, and the idea that there's an optical sensor on the remotes, and that might be a mouse, which I kind of doubt, personally. That seems to be a little bit exciting for a lot of people, but for the most part, this is the first time that Nintendo's announced a console that didn't have a major innovation in quite a long time. But I think that's just Nintendo doing what Nintendo should do. They had this really big innovation with being able to have a handheld that docked, and everybody doubted that in the beginning, which is really interesting to go back and look at now. A lot of the media out there was saying that the Switch might not be a success, and a lot of the third-party publishers like Activision and EA didn't support the Switch nearly as well as they had supported previous consoles like the Wii and the Wii U. They had gotten that Wii U bite and went, ooh, I don't want to actually produce any more games for Nintendo because they're probably on the way out. They're just going to end up being a software company anyways. And then the Switch came out and it blew everything out of the water. It sold something like 150 million units now already. It's going to end up outselling almost every other console ever. But that kind of gets me to my point here, and that's, can the Switch 2 sell the same amount of units that the Switch did? And I think even though I'm a huge supporter of the Nintendo Switch 2, and I think that this next generation of consoles for Nintendo is going to be one of their best ever, I think it's not going to sell as many units. Pricing is going to be probably the first issue they run into. They're going to want to price this a little bit higher first because it's the next generation, but also because inflation has been quite rampant over the last couple of years. Things have cooled down a little bit recently, but food prices and real estate prices have just gone gangbusters, and those things are hurting the pocketbooks of many people around the world. And that means that for a certain subset of the market, let's say the non-hardcore gamer, let's just talk about kids, for instance. If Nintendo comes out and says, you know, our console is $450, there's not a lot of parents out there that are going to want to spend $450 and then hand it off to their 8-year-old and expect that that console is not going to get totally trashed and they're going to end up spending that money all over again. So the inflation bit and the price increase, I think, is at least in the beginning going to slow down the sales that come from those family-based buyers. Now, it's not going to slow down people that are the hardcore gamers. Me, I'm going to go out and get one of these things like immediately. But I'm like a middle-aged dude that has lots of disposable income. And sure, I have kids. I've got a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. My kids will have a Switch 2 in their house, but it's dad's console, and they're going to wash their hands before they use it. Another issue that Nintendo might run into is the lack of perceived innovation in the product. Now, this is yet to be proven because the Switch 2 could end up having like some really cool innovation that blows everybody away, and it's the new cutting-edge next thing that Nintendo's doing. But so far, it looks like a direct sequel. It looks like an iterative approach to the console. And I think that it's going to be missing that buzzworthy word of mouth that a lot of people get when it comes to Nintendo products. I can remember when the Wii came out, I actually purchased one of those the day of release. I sat outside a Target until like 6 a.m. or something like that. It was very cold. But I had one, and I had one when Thanksgiving came around. I actually brought it to my family's Thanksgiving, and everybody took turns playing the Wii bowling game because it was something new and something different. I created buzz for Nintendo. The Switch 2 is just not going to do that. When little Johnny's sitting around at Thanksgiving playing the Nintendo Switch 2, they're going to be like, oh, he's got a new Switch. It looks like the Switch. He's doing Switch things. It, docks. And it's all of a sudden you lose that buzz. You lose that additional bit of marketing that you're able to get by having something that's new and cutting edge. They are going to suffer a little bit as well of increased competition. Other companies realize that Nintendo was on to something by having a console that's handheld that you can walk around with, and in some cases dock or connect to a TV when you'd like to do that. The Steamdeck is a thing. The Asus, the Rogue Ally, and the Lenovo, I don't even remember what their product is called, but there's a bunch of these different handheld PCs now. Those are competition for the Switch at this point in time. It's going to be direct competition for the Switch 2. And while I think the demographics do look a little bit different, there will be a number of people that own the Steam Deck or whatever the next iteration of the Steam Deck is, and they look at the Switch and go, do I really need to play Nintendo games? I can play everything on the PC library, and this one suits my needs as a hardcore gamer a little bit better. Maybe I can just not have the Switch. Finally, and this is probably the biggest factor, COVID at this point in time has kind of been done. In 2020, when COVID first hit, Animal Crossing came out right after everybody locked down and everyone got snuggled up, cozy in their house, and we all played Animal Crossing on our Nintendo Switches. You couldn't find a Nintendo Switch if you wanted to find a Nintendo Switch. You couldn't find Animal Crossing if you wanted to find Animal Crossing. It was an impossible thing to achieve. And we saw the results of COVID. The whole games industry just went absolutely bonkers, and money just started getting poured into video games. The retro market went absolutely insane, and game companies thought that that was just going to go on forever. They're like, well, this was market growth. People clearly will be doing this forever. That's not the case. And this next generation of Nintendo Switch is not going to have the advantage, and oh my God, I'm calling this an advantage. It won't have the advantage of COVID to get people to sit in their house and play consoles. So there's a lot of people that were passing time that way that will choose to not pass time that way over the next 5 or 6 years during this next console generation. All this being said though, this doesn't mean that the Switch 2 is not going to be wildly popular and wildly profitable. In fact, I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 will likely be more profitable than the Switch was, even though I think that they're going to sell a few less consoles. And the reason for that is I expect the attachment rate on the Switch 2 to be higher than the Switch. It seems like, and the rumor is, that the hardware in the Switch 2 is going to be much more capable. And with companies like Activision and EA getting on board at the very early onset, I think that we're going to see a lot better things in terms of software for the Switch 2 than we saw for the Switch. Nintendo's learned some really great lessons, and I think the attachment rate, how many console games are bought for that console, is going to be much higher. And I think in the end, Nintendo's going to be a very profitable company moving ahead in the next few years. But I do think that they're probably going to sell a few less consoles. I want to say a big thank you for everybody that's watching right now. It's great to be back. And until next time, this has been Pixel.